Chapter 10. The sun was just coming up, and Ian, Ellie, and Muldoon were safely back at the control room. Ray Arnold was hunched over his computer, where he'd been all night. No matter what he tried, he couldn't fix the security systems. Dennis Nedry's commands were too complicated. "I can't get Jurassic Park back online," he finally admitted to Mr. Hammond. "We'll have to shut down the entire system," Mr. Hammond said. "That will wipe out everything Nedry did. Then we can turn everything back on. The systems will be back to normal, the fences, the phones, everything will be working. And then we can locate Alan and my grandkids." Ellie, Muldoon, and Ian all listened closely. Shutting down the system would turn everything off. No lights, no computers. And what if the system didn't come back on? Then they'd really be sunk. There would be no chance of survival at all. Ray Arnold hated to do it, but he also knew he had no choice. He walked over to a red metal box on a wall. He took a key from his belt and unlocked the panel. Inside was a row of switches. One by one, Ray Arnold flipped them off. "You asked for it," he said, and he pulled the final switch. Every computer and every light shut off. They were in near darkness. Seconds ticked by. Then Arnold flipped the switches back on. Nothing happened. For a moment, Arnold was too panicked to move. Then he raced over to the main computer. "It's okay," he shouted. The screen was glowing. A minute later, 2 words appeared. "System ready." "The shutdown turned off the circuit breakers, but the lights are still out," said Ian, confused. "The shutdown turned off the circuit breakers," Arnold explained. "We just have to turn them back on. Then all the systems will come back on. The circuit box is in the maintenance shed. That's on the other side of the main compound. I'll go. In 3 minutes, the entire park will be under control." Arnold hurried out of the control room. Ellie and the others followed, carrying Ian on a stretcher. They were going to an underground shelter across from the visitor center. "Muldoon," Mr. Hammond ordered, "round up any staff members who are still on the island and bring them over too." Mr. Hammond thought everyone would be safer in the shelter, but even he knew it wasn't dinosaur-proof. All morning long, Alan, Tim, and Lex tramped through the jungle. At last, Alan let them rest in a meadow. "The visitor center should be just a mile from here. If we—" Alan stopped talking. A strange animal cry echoed through the jungle. Then the ground began to shake. Alan, squinting into the distance, could only make out shapes. But the shapes were coming closer. And seconds later, Alan realized what was happening. Dozens of dinosaurs were running. It was a stampede. "Just like a flock of birds," said Alan, "running away from an enemy." Then they heard another cry. Roar! It was the Tyrannosaurus. But where was it? The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. Suddenly, the dinosaur herd changed direction. Now it was heading straight for Alan, Tim, and Lex. Quickly, they ran for the cover of the jungle, but the dinosaurs moved more quickly. Alan knew they'd never make it. He pulled the kids under a mass of giant tree roots. They hid just in time. A second later, the herd thundered above their heads. They could see clawed feet through the roots. The dinosaurs were running for the jungle. Roar! The T-Rex burst out from behind the trees. It had been in the jungle all along, and now it stood in front of the herd. The dinosaurs scattered, but the Tyrannosaur was already on top of them. With a mighty roar, it sunk its teeth into the closest dinosaur. Tim and Alan watched, fascinated, but Lex knew this was the time to leave, while the T-Rex was busy. "Come on, you guys," she said. They ran toward the visitor center. The underground shelter was hot and crowded, and like the rest of the park, it was unfinished. Ellie paced back and forth as best she could among the crates and ladders. She was waiting, with Mr. Hammond, Ian, Muldoon, and the other Jurassic Park employees for Ray Arnold to return. "Something went wrong," she said after a while. "I'm going to get the power back on." "I'll ride shotgun," offered Muldoon. Everyone sprang into action. Muldoon hurried over to a steel cabinet. Inside were shotguns, rockets, and other weapons. Muldoon took the biggest gun he could find and quickly loaded it with bullets. In another corner of the shelter, Mr. Hammond unearthed a set of blueprints. He pulled out a map of the maintenance shed. Then, with Ian at his side, he pored over it inch by inch, trying to find the circuit box. Meanwhile, Ellie grabbed a flashlight from an open crate. Right next to it was a walkie-talkie set. She tossed one over to Mr. Hammond. "Think you can read that map and talk us through the shed?" she asked. "Absolutely," he said. Seconds later, they were ready.